Welcome to QueerStory, where we uncover the legacies of queer trailblazers who shaped history. Today we dive into the life of Marsha P. Johnson, a Black trans activist whose courage, resilience, and unwavering love for her community made her one of the most influential figures in the LGBTQ rights movement. Marsha P. Johnson was more than a name in queer history. She was a living embodiment of radical love and resistance. From surviving homelessness and police brutality to founding organizations that provided shelter for trans youth, her story is one of triumph in the face of oppression. Despite living in an era where being openly queer or trans was dangerous, Marsha never backed down. She fought for those society discarded, stood on the front lines of the LGBTQ+ rights movement, and changed the course of history with her bravery. But Marsha's story is also one of injustice. Her untimely and suspicious death remains an open wound in the queer community, highlighting the violence and neglect trans women of color still face. Even in death, her legacy continues to inspire activists, artists, and advocates worldwide. Let's explore Marsha's life, her struggles, her victories, and the lasting impact she left behind. Marsha P. Johnson was born Malcolm Michaels, Jr. on August 24, 1945, in Elizabeth, New Jersey. She grew up in a working-class religious family and was assigned male at birth. As a child, Marsha found joy in dressing femininely, but she quickly learned that doing so came with cruel bullying and discrimination. Living in a time when being LGBTQ+ was stigmatized, criminalized, and medicalized, Marsha had few role models or safe spaces to explore her gender identity. She later said that she was sexually assaulted by a teenage boy at a young age, an experience that made her suppress her femininity until she left for New York City. After graduating high school, Marsha packed a bag with just $15 and a bag of clothes and moved to Greenwich Village, the epicenter of New York's LGBTQ+ community. There she found acceptance among drag queens, sex workers, and unhoused queer youth who had also fled home in search of safety. In New York, Marsha fully embraced her true self and adopted the name Marsha P. Johnson. The P stood for Pay It No Mind, her signature response whenever people questioned her gender. She became a beloved figure in the queer community, known for her vibrant personality, extravagant outfits, often made from thrifted or found materials, and boundless generosity. Though she lived in poverty for most of her life, she gave whatever she had to those in need. Marsha was a sex worker, a drag queen, and a performer in the legendary Hot Peaches drag troupe. She often faced harassment, police brutality, and homelessness, but through it all, she remained joyful, compassionate, and fiercely protective of her community. In the 1960s, LGBTQ+ people had almost no legal protections. Homosexuality was still classified as a mental illness, and cross-dressing laws made it illegal for trans and gender non-conforming people to wear clothing that didn't match their assigned sex. Police routinely raided gay bars, arresting, assaulting, and humiliating patrons. One such bar was the Stonewall Inn, a mafia-run gay bar in Greenwich Village that catered to the most marginalized: drag queens, trans women, sex workers, and unhoused youth. On the night of June 28, 1969, police raided Stonewall as they had done before. But this time, instead of accepting the abuse, the patrons fought back. The Stonewall Riots erupted, lasting for several nights, as LGBTQ+ people resisted police brutality. The exact details of Marsha's involvement remain debated, but multiple witnesses place her at the scene. Some say she was one of the first to resist arrest, while others recall her throwing a shot glass at a mirror, shouting, "I got my civil rights," an act now known as the shot glass heard round the world. Regardless of whether she started the riot, Marsha was on the front lines, fighting against the police and rallying others to resist. Her presence as a black trans woman at the heart of the rebellion cemented her legacy as a revolutionary. Stonewall became the catalyst for the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement, leading to the formation of organizations like the Gay Liberation Front and the first-ever Pride March in 1970. After Stonewall, Marsha realized that while the LGBTQ+ movement was gaining momentum, trans people, especially trans women of color, were still being excluded. Alongside her best friend and fellow activist Sylvia Rivera, she founded STAR, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, in 1970, a home for trans youth. STAR was the first organization in the U.S. led by trans women of color, and its mission was simple: to house and protect homeless trans youth who had nowhere else to go. Marsha and Sylvia rented an apartment, turning it into the first trans-run shelter. They housed, fed, and cared for trans youth, using money they earned from sex work to keep the shelter running. They were doing the work that no one else was willing to do, and they did it with love, patience, and an unbreakable bond. Fighting the AIDS crisis. In the 1980s, the AIDS epidemic devastated the LGBTQ+ community, and the government's inaction led to thousands of deaths. Marsha became a vocal member of ACT UP, AIDS coalition to unleash power, protesting to demand better health care and treatment for people living with HIV/AIDS. Despite her declining health, Marsha never stopped fighting. The suspicious circumstances of her death. On July 6, 1992, Marsha's body was found floating in the Hudson River. Police quickly ruled her death a suicide, despite evidence suggesting foul play. Friends reported that Marsha had been harassed the night before, and witnesses saw her being chased by an unknown man. For decades, activists fought to have her case reopened. In 2012, the NYPD reopened the investigation, but no conclusions were made. To this day, many believe Marsha was murdered, a tragic reminder of the violence that black trans women continue to face. Marsha P. Johnson's influence can still be felt today. She is now recognized as one of the most important figures in LGBTQ+ history, and her work inspired countless activists. Honoring Marsha. In 2019, the Marsha P. Johnson Institute was founded, continuing her work by protecting black trans people. In 2020, New York City announced plans to build a monument in her honor, the first of its kind dedicated to a trans woman. Her name is now synonymous with trans liberation, queer resistance, and radical love. What we can learn from Marsha. Marsha P. Johnson's life teaches us that the fight for justice is messy, dangerous, and often overlooked, but it is always necessary. She gave everything to ensure that the most vulnerable were seen, heard, and cared for. Her message remains clear. No pride for some of us without liberation for all of us. That's it for this episode of QueerStory. If you enjoyed learning about Marsha P. Johnson, stay tuned for more stories of queer resilience, power, and history. Until next time, stay bold, stay proud, and keep making history. I'ma do what I want, when I want.